Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
So this is day 3, and today we will talk about sustainability. So what does it mean to have sustainable development, to have climate justice, to have environmental justice? What are the effects? What does it cost? In all of this, we will be talking about pathways to get to net zero, as well as looking at country declared, nationally determined goals, contributions, and we'll look at a scorecard for various nations that belong and have signed up for declaring their contributions to reduce emissions. So we'll see where we are. These emissions, the declarations came in around 2015 with the Paris Agreement. They were updated, and they were updated again last year because at AR6, Assessment Report 6, because there was not enough being done. So at the Paris Agreement in 2015, countries got together and said, indeed, there is unequivocal evidence of climate change, and we need to do something. And this is what we are going to do. And there were very ambitious goals that were put up by all the countries. And when we had the next assessment report, there was one in 2005 and again in 2023. In 2023, the IPCC went back to nations and said, this is not enough because you have not even met the goals that you said you will meet. So many countries came back and said, okay, we will do a much more aggressive job. We will be better. And so we'll see where we stand. What is the report card for every one of the countries? And we can pull up any country you want and take a look at them. So the topics we'll cover are sustainability. First, just a definition. What is sustainability? What is economic sustainability? What is climate and environmental sustainability? What is justice in this context? And then we'll look at the NDCs, goals and responsibilities. We will look to see what should be possible economic scenarios to pay for it. And perhaps towards the end, we'll take a little conversation to say how much are we all in this room, how much are we willing to pay. Okay, so first let's look at sustainability. Right, so we are wanting to do things that are not harming the future generations' potential to grow. So there are 3 pillars of sustainability. These are social, environmental, and economic. So all of these 3 come into consideration when we are looking at a sustainable development. Each country has its own definition, its own criteria, its own guidelines, but the framework is pretty constant. We use those frameworks to design engineering projects. So, for example, if you are designing a carbon capture plant, what are your sustainability goals? Along the way, we will look at the UN declared sustainability goals, UN SDGs. That's United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And there are 17 of them, and we'll look through a few of them. And then we'll examine who is needed, to what extent, in what role, to develop projects, engineering projects, development projects in a sustainable manner. Is it someone else? Is it the government's decision? Is it the CEO's decision of a company? Is it the engineers? Or is it everyone? And if it is everyone, who does what? Again, there are a couple of videos that you can watch. There is a very nice one, very basic one from UCLA that defines what is sustainability. And I will not go through that, but what I did was I took parts of that, and this is the video link. We will not go through it, but I took parts of that and said, okay, what exactly do we mean when we say sustainability? We said there are three main pillars. That's the environment, the economy, and equity, the 3 E's of sustainability. Boiled down to its fundamental basics, what we are trying to do when we say sustainable development is that to ensure what we do today will not harm the future of tomorrow. So, we want to have a development that is mindful of the fact that we are not alone and we are not the only ones. There are people and generations, not just humans, but all nature that will come tomorrow. They should have the same opportunity, if not better, what we have today. We should not be damaging the environment. We should not be damaging the economy. We should not be damaging the accessibility, the justice portions, so that some people are left out. So one of the big things in climate change work, in all of the CCS, CCUS, sustainability work, is to examine when we do something, when we design a capture plant, when we design a storage location, where do we put it and who benefits? One is a real benefit, right? We all benefit by cleaning up the environment, by making sure that temperatures don't rise. But that's a fuzzy benefit. That's something that we have, you don't see it right away. You see it in 10 years where you say, okay, these summers are getting hotter. So it's nothing that you can put in the bank. So when we look at sustainability in carbon storage, we're looking to count up what benefits people have. So I'll give you a very simple example. Let's say I'm coming in, I have a storage plant that I want to put in. There is a very nice formation below the IIT Madras campus. And so I approach your leadership and I say, you know what, this is prime location. I can do all of the science, I can do everything. Allow me to drill a well down to 3,000, 4,000 feet, about a kilometer in depth, and I will inject 50 million tons of carbon dioxide over 30 years. What is your response? Okay, that's a real question. Given your expressions, I'd love to hear back, especially IIT Madras folks. I want to come in. Let's say I have identified what's an open area, the football ground, and I will, and really, it's going to be a footprint of maybe this size once I'm done. Right? All it's going to be is an injection site, so it's not going to be much. So I'm asking your management to allow me to drill a well. For 1 or 2 years, it will be disruptive because we'll get trucks in, we'll put all of that. Once the pipeline is done, once everything is in place, it will not be a very big footprint. So your management is considering allowing me to put 50 million tons of carbon dioxide on your below your football field. Okay? Is that okay with you? Not okay with you? What are your thoughts? I can wait. The football ground will not be a football ground because there is a well below. No, the well is 1 kilometer below. I will have maybe one part right next to where the bleachers are, and I can have the pump over there. It's not going to disturb the surface activities. Safety concerns, right? So you have concerns, there are safety. What else? Sorry, yeah. Will it affect the groundwater? Okay, so that's another one. You get chances of subsidence. So there might be surface subsidence that you can face, possibly, right? That might happen if you have pressure difference, you're not maintaining your pressure, you're under pressure, and then suddenly things start to sink. It's 1 kilometer. So my response to everything is your groundwater is 200, 300 meters. I am 1 kilometer deep, right? You will still have your football field because I'm off in one corner, and I promise you I will maintain pressures, so you will not see subsidence. Yes, 30 years long, I have to commit to coming and to making sure things are there. I don't think, so one of the things which is very critical in this scenario is what you need to be asking is not just while I'm injecting, but in the long term. How am I going to guarantee that it stays in place? So I need to monitor. Right? This is usually every country has different requirements and regulations. In the US, I need to make sure that I'm monitoring 50 years after everything is shut down, after the injections are complete. I do not know what the rules are in India. Monitoring does not mean it's completely safe. I'm monitoring, which means I know when something is going to happen. So I need to have, I'll just paraphrase your comment, monitoring doesn't mean that it's safe. I need to also make sure that I'm showing you what the mitigation plan is in case something starts to breach, right? So I need to prove that to you. What else do I need to do? Yes. It's local impacts because there might be leaks, there might be some things that even though I have a mitigation plan, I'm not able to meet that. So I have to have a fund in place with which I can pay back or do some mitigation and do some reparations, right? So there are quite a few things that come into play when we say we are going to store carbon dioxide in a place. For those of you who are students, you should be asking, so if you're doing this, do I have a job with you? Am I creating jobs? Most probably no. I will need people to drill the well. I will need people to do the characterization. Maybe some of you will be employed, but it's a short-term thing. After the characterization is done, it's really nothing. So why would you want it in your backyard? That's the basic question that we get asked. Why don't you do it where you're living? Why do you do it where I'm living? Right? So the part which we discuss a lot in carbon storage where I work is yes, we can do this, and yes, we can promise a bright future for everyone 50 years from now, 100 years from now. People don't care. They care more about today and now. When we look at distribution of factories, of pollution, of waste management, oftentimes those are located in poorer neighborhoods. Those are located in places where people live who don't have the social status. And so if that is the case, and you can map it in hot areas, you can map richer zones are 1 or 2 degrees cooler than poorer zones because they can afford to have trees. If you map the temperature inside IIT and you go outside, you have more dust outside, you have more noise, you have more congestion, much fewer trees. There's a marked temperature change as soon as you cross the boundary, as soon as you cross into the gate. This is a very special environment that's created. Now, for all of you who are students, examine back to see how many get into IIT. What is the process of getting admission? How many classes do you have to take? How many tuitions do you have to take? And then think back to the equity question, who can afford to do that? So there are consequences of all of these benefits that we enjoy, and there are costs that other people have to pay for it, right? So what I'm trying to impress on you is when we talk about sustainable development, every one of those factors have to be met. And that's not an easy goal. That's not a simple thing to do. It's not a trivial task. And yet we have to address this. We have to address this not just as politicians, but as scientists, as engineers, as people who will go out there and design projects. Who is it going to benefit? In what way? And who is it going to harm? Who will be left behind? In all of this technology development, technology revolution, the modernization, if we examine the social stratification, it's becoming wider, not narrower. You would think all of technology should help to get less stratification in society. And that's really not what's happening. So if you look at the data, it is pushing people apart rather than together. And this doesn't happen only in a certain number of countries, it's all over the world. And so if we then look at emissions, and we look at the amount of emissions generated by top 1% or 0.1% of people who are the richest, this is disproportionately high. The poorest consume the least, and they live in the worst areas. So there has to be something that compensates for that. So when we talk about sustainable development, what we're saying is that our rate of consumption should be equal, if not less, than the rate of replenishment. So if we are using some resources, if we are using materials, those materials should not be used in a way that after 50 years that's done and gone, and now we have to look for something else. In all of this, then we also need to know what are the interconnections. In everything, there is an interconnection. If we are pushing for alternative energies, we are looking at batteries to store and make the energy available when it's not plenty. For that, we need batteries. In today's world, we need a lot of lithium for that, because lithium batteries are the major source. Lithium has become a commodity. If you look at lithium mining, it is usually, currently, in poorest nations with very low standard of safety, pay. The economic markers, safety markers, the environmental markers are very, very low in most of these mining operations. Right? So we are the sustainable aspect of renewable energy is something that needs to be examined closely. And then we need to ask ourselves, what is it, which path do we want to go? What are we willing to give up? And I think there were a few systems engineers here, if I remember correctly, and that will require a systems thinking. What is this entire system of climate change, climate mitigation, and emissions control? Because there are many different factors that come into it. It doesn't matter what is your central part. Your central part can be capture, but once you capture, you have to store it. Once you store it, you need to have safety. If you're capturing, you're using some products, those have to be manufactured, you need raw materials. So, and in your capture process, you will need water. You're competing for water. You're competing for energy to build those plants. So all of this becomes one big system. I have heard people describe this as a wicked problem. Is that a concept, a wicked problem? Okay. We will. So I'll spend a couple of minutes on it. I don't think that is correct to define it as such, because first of all, the word wicked implies it's something really bad, and it's not really nice. We don't want to do it because it is wicked. The other thing is, if you know what wicked problem means, then it's very easy to throw up your hands and say, I can't do anything. It is a wicked problem. It's beyond my personal capability. A wicked problem is where you have numerous factors that come in, that some you can control, some you cannot control. Some you can quantify, some you cannot quantify. There are no clear relationships to be built, and yet the system hangs together. You tweak one thing, you change the other. That's a wicked problem. And the implication is a wicked problem requires everyone to work together. The reason I don't much care for that sort of terminology is because it gives us an out. I can't do anything anyway, let others do it, or let the government do it, let United Nations do it. It's on that level. But that's not really what it should imply. It should imply we all have to pull together, because one person, one team, one nation cannot do it alone. So, what is sustainable development? Like we said, it's meeting the needs of today without compromising tomorrow. In the UCLA example, it's a very simple-minded video. So, but still, it's very effective, because they say, think of sustainability as a bathtub, and you are using up the water, and you're using more than what the trickle of water coming in is. So over time, your bathtub will empty. If you use less, it will overflow, right? So you're using just enough so that the balance is maintained. What it requires is that we have an inclusive plan that brings in everyone into the picture. And this should be not just for your people, it should be in a thinking for the planet. It's pulling everyone together. If you remember Dorothy's presentation yesterday, where she said, it's not your atmosphere versus my atmosphere. It's all the same. Your emissions and my emissions commingle. It does not matter who did the emissions. So if we are pulling together, how are we going to do that? That's the sustainability definition to manage. So let's take the example of poverty. We want to eradicate poverty. If we want to do that, we need to define what all do we do, what are the steps, what are the possibilities that are needed. I'm told that they will flash something if I go away from that, if I go away from here. So I'm just afraid of moving around too much. Anyway, so the eradication of poverty needs to be in a sustainable manner. It needs to include everyone. It needs to create opportunities for more people so they can be working for themselves, for their livelihoods. And it needs to raise the basic standard of living, not just for a few, but for all. So there are various ways to do that. Every nation decides it's in its own way. The part which is interesting is, how do you tie it in all together? How do you get the people of one city, one state, one country to pull in the same direction without thoughts of what I call tribalism, where you say, okay, my group, my building, my university, my this should be better because we deserve more than others. And it's something we inherently know, we inherently believe in, and yet we forget because the pressures of maintaining livelihoods is large. If you stood in a line and the tickets are running out, you know tickets are running out, all of that very nice thinking of standing in a line waiting for your turn goes away, because now you're elbowing your way because you really want to get that ticket or you want to get into the train, right? So the thing is, the sustainable development is a development that progresses despite threats to that development, despite outside influences that work against what you're trying to do. And that's what really defines what is a strength of development. So these are the United Nations Sustainable Goals, 17 of them. Each one of them, so if you go to the, if you search for UN SDGs, you will find every one of them. You can click each one and it defines what they mean in it and what's happening and what are the steps, what do you need to do. I just counted them all because that small thing is not easy to understand. So if you look at them, they are lofty goals, right? This is something we can all buy into. We want to end poverty, we want to have justice for all, we want to have equality, we want to have cities that are livable, we want to have gender equality, water and sanitation should be available, and so on. It's easy to count these up. It's hard to see where you lie on this, where are you going to put your efforts in, and how far have you come. So that's the part which is really key to having sustainable goals. We do this as an example where we take with students who take the climate change class, we take, and usually these are people from the industry. So we have them work in little groups and say, define sustainability goals for your company. Look at these sustainability goals, look at the definitions, give yourselves a scorecard on every one of these aspects. How far are you? Where are you? Where do you need to do some more work? Where are you excelling? And that's the thing which I think is required. We have not done it for my university or for my group, because it's very hard to look at yourself. It is easy to point fingers at everyone else. So, but it is needed. It is needed to be examining each one of them for every action, every plant, every company, every factory that we build. And the links are here. This is really nice, this second website, because it gives you actions that you can take. If you are a single person, or you are in a community, or at a state level, or at a nation level, and it gives you long-term and short-term actions that you can take. So I found this really very interesting, because it is useful to see and judge yourselves, to say, where are we on this scale? Are we already doing it? So move on, let's see how far we can get. Almost like quizzing yourself to say, what are we doing and what do we need to do? Yes? I think it's I tried to look for it. As far as I know, these are the amount of members for each one of those. So the question was, what are these numbers on top? And those are, I think, the membership, or the people who have joined into this action committee. So bigger groups. That's my feeling, but you might want to look into it and see exactly what the numbers are. So if we are, we're in the discussion to decarbonize. So if we want to decarbonize industry, there are interrelated. They need not be sequential, one after the other, but these all need to happen, because one thing changes the other. So there are synergies between all of these goals. So you have service demand, you have service product, efficiency, circularity. That means you have a circular economy that you're putting to use and reuse. You have efficient operations, you're doing your fuel switching, and you're getting utilization of carbon dioxide and storage of carbon dioxide. All of these are building on each other. So if you tweak one, something else has to change. So that's sort of what is meant in the interrelated non-sequential goals. Now, all of this is in the assessment report from United Nations, from the IPCC assessment report from last year. And each one of them, there are working groups, up to, I think, 11 working groups, and they bring out these reports. This is pulled out from working group 3. So what you should be taking away from this is, we need to integrate everything. It's not enough to do one. It's not enough to do two. If we want to decarbonize, then we have to get all of these in some way, at least on plan, that there is something going to happen. Too often, people concentrate. So, for example, it's very easy for me to say, I know I can do parts over here. I really don't understand all of the rest. Let me just work on what I know best, right? But I need to make sure that I understand enough of what's going on the other side, so that everything is tying together. Okay, so let's look at access and justice. It's an interesting concept. There are, again, 2 videos that you can watch. One is sharing Topgay from the Hindu Kush region. It's a very interesting, it's not new, it's an old interview. These are both TED Talks. They are now broadcast on YouTube. It was easier because I can link them easier. Top Day talks about about a third continent, of sixth continent he calls it, and that's the snow, the ice that they need, because they live in the mountains where they expect ice to be there. In recent years, that is not happening, so their lifestyle is changing. The same thing with Anote Tong, who talks about the island of Kiribati that is going underwater. Elevation is less than 20 feet, a couple of feet. So a few centimeters of sea level rise gets rid of a lot of land. They are looking at alternatives for their islands. These are part of the Solomon Island group. Some of the islands are just 1 or 2 meters above sea level. So people living there are already needing to move. So they are developing concepts of floating islands where they would just ride out the sea level change, because the land on which they live will not be existent anymore. So it's useful to listen to these sort of videos and see how people are dealing with their problems. One thing which he says is really key is that no one leaves their land for no reason. There's always something that drives people away from where they make their home. That type of impetus, that type of climate refugee system is something that we are not acknowledging today. We're not acknowledging the migration of thousands of people across the border in the US, from places like Mexico, from places like Guatemala, that are escaping either war or drought. So there are consequences, sorry, I don't want to play this, consequences that people are bearing for this, okay? I think we talked about this. I just want to briefly mention the difference. We look at two different ways to understand climate. One is when everything has reached equilibrium. That means that the cause and effects have played out. And so, for example, we look at the warming due to the doubling of carbon dioxide. If we wait till steady state, that takes a long time. We wait for all the forcings, everything to come in, and once we do the analysis, it will be centuries before anything is happening. Not before. It takes centuries for the system to come into equilibrium for doubling of the carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere. The oceans, the ice, livestock, everything would be then appearing to change in centuries' time. It's a useful thing to have for prediction. It's not very useful for today. So we look at another term, that's the transient response of climate, and that's what's happening today. Today's markers for changes due to emissions are what we call transient. Together, we can use them to model a long-term equilibrium response. So when you look at climate models, they are going for equilibrium response to find, if you think of the models you're looking at, you're looking for minimum energy of the system. That's where you have reached equilibrium. that takes a long time. There is a term that's coming up more and more in the past years, and that is climate reparations. Yesterday we talked about historical emissions, about emissions that have been generated. We compared US with EU and Canada, EU and US, and we realized only today China is about the same level as the European Union. By 2100 is when they will reach the levels of carbon dioxide equivalent emissions same as the United States. Right? So there are many countries who are saying we will never get to that state. So today's problems, when we are trying to mitigate today's problems, countries that are most responsible should be paying A, to mitigate, B, to make up for the harm that is already being caused. So that's sort of the concept behind climate reparations. The COP29 that just finished reached an agreement of allowing payments of $39 billion per year. And there are countries, many countries, who walked away from it saying we will not sign this because it's too little and too late. If you would like to listen to this, this is a very nice, another TED Talk. No, this is a Deutsche Welle, it's a German TV, but there is a lawmaker from England that discusses what it means to have climate justice. But you can look at very dry data. These are observed impacts, and this is the latest one that's coming out from last year, the impacts of climate change on human systems. And it's for many different geographic locations, and there is a global response. It's broken up into water and food, health and well-being, and places to live. So what we're looking at is almost every part of the system being perturbed. A minus means there is a large likelihood of it happening. Dark blue means the impact is severe. Lighter color means it is there, but it's not as severe. Empty spot means that it's not measurable, it's not assessed. This is not assessed. And a gray means, yes, it's there, but it's not as distinct. Plus minus means there are both positive and negative effects. So it's almost, I've been reading this report again and again, and now especially for this class also, and it reads really like a doomsday report, I must say. But the challenge is that this is not a trivial thing. This is not a movie where everyone dies and then we go home and then we celebrate again, right? When we were doing this class, Chuck Wilson and I, a couple of years ago, we started compiling, okay, what are the impacts of warming of 1.5 degrees versus 2 degrees above gust. By now, when I say 1.5 or 2 degrees, you should automatically fill in the blanks in your mind. This is above gust. It's not 1.5 degree change above what we have here locally today, right? So we go through all of the different reports and we say, yes, indeed, there was agreement that this is changing. We really need to do this. And we need to have a global response to climate change, sustainable development, and eradication of poverty. I could say some sarcastic remarks, but I will not. The IPCC body, when it assessed climate change, just for definition, has 195 members, and almost every country belongs to this organization. The reports are long and protracted. Deciding on the reports has to be done with consensus. So everyone agrees. So sometimes the messages have to be watered down because countries do not want that dire of a situation to be printed about them, right? So this is a part which is critical to understand. In 2010, there was an agreement by countries to limit global average warming to 2 degrees centigrade. That was an agreement. And as part of that, people wanted to have these NDCs declared and meet those NDCs. Interestingly, there were alliances of many countries, especially small island countries, poor and middle income countries, that said 2 degrees is much too much. At 2 degrees centigrade, our economies will fail. We cannot manage to deal with the climate disasters that will happen. So we need to limit it to 1.5 degrees. Okay, so these are some of real considerations that we had to address to be able to do that. And the indicators are numerous. There are the energy change, there is the whole energy budget from over a considerable span of time. But and this was from the assessment report 5. Let's see. Yeah, I'm pretty sure this is assessment report 5, where all of these factors were brought in together. This one, for example, when we compiled the data, we had data only up to 2010, and we were around 372 zetajoules of energy trapped in the oceans. Today, we are around 410, 420. And the colors here are shallow, deeper and deeper. It's not just the shallow part that's warming, it's the entire water column. So the sea life is migrating lower and adapting for higher pressures. There's a very nice movie that came we just saw it about last month. It's called Nocturnals. It's about a PhD student here in India who's doing her work in Arunachal Pradesh, I think Arunachal, in the mountains, and she's looking at moths. There are certain type of moths that thrive at certain locations, elevations. So it's a very distinctive geomarker, a biomarker, where you can track how far up or down the moths are going or how big they are based on the temperature changes. If temperatures are cooler, the moths thrive and they become larger. As temperatures increase, they become smaller. So her work is about tracking these. It's a thankless job. If you watch the movie, there's really nothing happening except going out in the night, putting up these screens with lights so that moths are attracted, and then going in to count up there is one particular type of moth. I've forgotten the name even, but that's the one that is biomarker amongst hundreds of moths. So the job that she has for her PhD, for those of you who are struggling with PhDs, think for that woman. She is mapping that one type of moth, going out night after night and taking pictures, analyzing them, moving locations all over the range so that she can track the effect of change in temperature on this one biomarker. right? So there are many, and all of that then go into reports like this, to say what will be the change if we allow temperatures to increase. So we already know that up until 2018, this was when we had compiled this, the human-induced warming had led to increases in land and ocean temperatures. There are more frequent heat waves. These have become even more frequent now. The number of days, so we count this in number of days above a certain temperature, above maximum temperature. In Colorado, it's above 30 degrees. Here, I think it used to be above 40, and now it's above 50. The number of days that you, in every city, how many days in a year do you have above 50 degrees, right? So in perhaps 10 years ago, 20 years ago, temperatures above 50 happened once or twice a year. Temperatures above 40 in Colorado were 3 or 4 times, 3 or 4 days in a year. We have had last year sustained a week of 40 degrees centigrade temperature. After a few weeks, again 40 degrees, again 40 degrees. The number of days in certain temperatures is rising. The marine heat waves, these are heat waves that happen which are extreme events in oceans, in the temperature, and are rising both in frequency and in duration. Not only do they happen more often, they last longer. As the climate warms, evaporation is more, and so we have more humidity in the atmosphere that comes down again in form of extreme rain. So there have been a very large intensity and frequency of heavy precipitation, especially well, not especially, in many parts of the world. And so we can compare, we can look at this and say, okay, if we have this effect happening at 1.5 degrees centigrade, how will that change whether we have 1.5 or 2 degrees? Because those are considerations that we will be making. We will have to make considerations and say, we cannot meet 1.5 degrees centigrade anymore. So if we cannot meet 1.5 degrees centigrade, we're going to the next one, that's 2 degrees centigrade. What are we to expect? What is the danger that's coming at the population? What should we warn against? That could mean bigger shelters, better shelters, more shelters to house more people, better insurances, or convincing insurances to not drop people because they don't make money anymore. So all of that is part of these considerations that will have to be met. And there are lists and lists of these things. I don't think you need to know this. You need to know this, but you don't need me to tell you this. I think many of you can think, just if you think of your own lives, of your own sphere of influence, you can think back to say, if things get hotter, if they get wetter, if they get colder, what's going to happen? How is my life going to change? So when we develop then systems, we look at climate resiliency. This is 2022, and we're looking at whether we're going in this direction. This is projecting out to 2100. Many countries have declared their goals, sustainable development goals, by 2030 to meet them. Some have said 2060, 2070 to be net zero, right? We map all of this to the sustainable development goals and say there are a couple of things that we can do. One is societal choices. We can make societal choices that change through adaptation, through development, sustainable development. We either do it or we don't. We have different arenas of engagement. We can have knowledge diversity versus singular knowledge concentrated in some people versus diversified in many people. And so there are many different ways to look at this. Depending on the choices we make, we will have a pathway that goes one way or the other, right? On this side, there are actions and outcomes. And so there are actions that we can take that would be concentrating towards certain goals that reduce poverty, that have well-being at their mind, that have justice and equity in their mind, and others that leave certain parts of the population vulnerable, that do not work with justice. So when you think of this, we look at climate resilient development. Depending on which path you take, you will be less resilient or more resilient as a society, as a country. And so the development goals, the sustainable development goals, boil down to this sort of a pathway in the terms of climate. And you can do this for every other development goal that you want to look at.